area of international health, some well-funded programs that focused on very clear short-term targets. We're going to immunize this population against this particular disease. Some of these well-funded programs ended up undermining the long-term health care needs of the population and the health system's capacity to meet them. What's the point? It's not that writing checks isn't important, but that we can't assay a gift simply in terms of the amount of money that was transferred. We need to, among other things, pay attention to what happened. And this brings us back to money. There's something wrong with this picture. I challenge you to ferret out the problem here. To be sure, lots of money and resources changed hands in these cases of international health philanthropy. Yet despite good intentions, the resources ended up being used inefficiently, and in some cases, frankly, perniciously. Merely multiplying by 2 or 10 times the amount of money involved would do nothing to mitigate this harm. The amount is not the end. The amount is the byproduct of something else. If we seek money for its own sake, we frequently preclude the possibility of finding anything more. Of course, this doesn't stop those of us interested in philanthropy from focusing on the money. Even nonprofit organizations whose mission is to study giving may end up spending a lot of our time and energy trying to figure out how to get more money. When this happens, we find ourselves in the uncomfortable position sometimes of extolling the beauty of generosity, but practicing a kind of ugliness of avarice. We need to remember writing checks is but one way of giving, and those need to be situated in a larger context. It's an important one, to be sure, but many great institutions, many great initiatives wouldn't have been possible had not large checks been written. But we can share the best we have in other ways, many of which involve the transfer of no funds. Consider teachers whose work exceeds contractual obligations. Some people say, hey, that's their job. That's what they're being paid for. That's their job description. They're not giving anything. They don't deserve any credit for generosity. I beg to differ. Consider teachers whose work exceeds contractual obligations, overflowing with insights that enrich the minds and the lives of their learners. This is human generosity at its best. A visitor once asked Mother Teresa what he could do to promote world peace. Her answer: go home and love your family. What's most real and vital in our universities today is not happening in boardrooms, but in classrooms. What's most real and vital in philanthropy today isn't happening in places like press conferences, but on the front lines of sharing, where givers and receivers are transformed into face-to-face collaborators pursuing a shared vision of human enrichment. In too many cases today, whether we're talking about business, teaching, or fundraising, to be sharp enough to get lots of money requires that we be dull enough to want it. Socrates, right? David's, the death of Socrates. Consider Socrates, who regarded his own small sacrifices as in no way inferior to the magnificent gestures of the rich. On what basis could he make that claim? On what basis could the gifts of a stonecutter, unable to support his own family on at least an intermittent basis, on what basis could his gifts be in no way inferior to the gifts of the rich? There's another danger in putting money first. People who become accustomed to thinking and working in these terms may find themselves slipping into cynicism. We find ourselves mouthing the platitudes of generosity, but we begin to see selfishness at the root of many acts of giving. I feel that I need to pretend to be something I'm not and get cleverer and cleverer at getting away with it. Which is a better life? To get very good at pretending to be something we're not? Well, let's even grant that we not only get away with it, but get rewarded handsomely for it. Which is better? To be very good at pretending to be something we're not, or to strive with all our might to be as fully human as we can and help others do the same, let the chips fall where they may. The pretender may advance far and achieve great material success, but the best educators and philanthropists can never conscience such a choice. Truly generous people share not because they hope for some reward, but because they know the best things in life, like understanding and love, are made even better when we share them. Far from being exhausted, they actually increase and come fully to life only when we share them. Think about that. Knowledge and love come fully to life only when we share them. The preferred currency of truly generous people isn't just coins, but words. The kind of words with real fecundity. The power to enrich life by bringing good things into being. What's our goal for our children? I would say it's not primarily that they should live comfortably or even well. If by well we mean the parameters by which economists usually assess standards of living. Our real goal is that our children and our students should learn and live with a deep sense of curiosity, a profound sense of beauty, real passion for the things that matter most, and great courage and devotion. The problem with money is its tendency to frame the discussion in terms of ownership. Money can buy us many things, but when it comes to the most important things in life, money can't do so much. No one can buy or own what's most real and alive. We can only serve as its more or less faithful stewards, doing what we can during this brief span to reveal and share as much of it as possible. Let me tell you a story about teaching and giving. It's a true story. A celebrated historian, a man who had won many prestigious awards for his writing, was invited to give an address at a great American university. In conjunction with his visit, the university's former president, a highly distinguished scholar and leader in his own right, invited him to lunch. This great historian and former university president are dining together, and the former president asked the historian whether in college he'd majored in history. No, the historian replied, I was an English major. In fact, I didn't take a single history course until my very last semester. That must have been quite a course, the president replied. The historian paused, looking off into the distance. Actually, I don't remember much about it. I can't even tell you the name of the instructor. He wasn't a faculty member, but a graduate student. So the course didn't make much of an impression on you, prompted the former president. Actually, said the historian, I was very inspired by something the instructor said on the very first day of class. He told us we're going to be studying many different historical ages, events, and personages. As we do so, never forget that we're not just talking about names and dates. We're talking about real flesh and blood human beings, people as real as you and I. The historian again looked away. That really impressed me. I've never forgotten it. In everything I've written, I've always tried to capture the sense that we're dealing with real people who got up every morning and laid their heads down every night. They were human beings just like us, who bore children, buried their parents, and who were in turn buried by their children. They gazed up at the very same sun, same moon, and same starry night sky that now shine above us. It's a beautiful story, replied the former president, to which I would add one coda. The graduate student who taught that course? Yes, said the historian. You're looking at him, said the president. Now this is giving at its best. No money changed hands. In the words of Henry Adams, a teacher affects eternity. No one can tell where his influence stops. Moving money around is insufficient. Let me borrow a simile from Plato's dialogue, the Phaedrus. That, of course, is a detail of Plato from Raphael's The School of Athens. Plato says a mere money mover is like a physician who knows how to raise and lower the body's temperature, but not when and why it's appropriate to do so. I've got the how, but I'm lacking the why. That happens in medicine. Sometimes we can keep the patient's heart beating, keep the kidneys filtering the blood long past the natural end of those processes. Are we doing the patient a favor? Doing the patient's family a favor? Doing humanity a favor? It's a serious issue, right? There's a huge difference between somebody writing a check and a philanthropist. The true philanthropist is inspired by a deep passion for human enrichment. To be truly generous, we must know what generosity is truly for. All right, now mercifully we move on to the third and final segment of the talk on the subject of certainty, and that's René Descartes, who thought our number one criterion as knowers should be certainty. I think that's patently false, but who am I to criticize René Descartes? Education and giving are ultimately matters of faith. Faith is not a matter of certainty so much as a matter of focus and attention. What matters most is not our level of confidence in what we believe, but the choices we make about how to invest our lives. As we've seen, each of us is leading a life dedicated to some vision of what it's all about. It might be getting or spending. It might be serving a transcendent purpose, but each of us is staking our lives on something. To repeat, certainty is not the primary issue. After all, once we're certain of something, there's little reason to keep exploring it. The question isn't which questions have we settled, but which questions are worth returning to again and again throughout our lives. Which questions are worth not only living with, but living for. What's the question, the idea, the vision that our whole existence is being lived out to realize? The point's this: we should not teach what we do not believe deeply in and care passionately about. We should not give what we do not believe deeply in and care passionately about. Why not? Because we become what we teach and give. Are we becoming more and more fearful, frustrated, and embittered, or more curious, compassionate, and joyful? If we allow ourselves to care more and more about less and less, we'll end up leading lesser lives. The narrative of the cleansing of the temple with which we began tonight is a story of sacrifice. What do we have to offer? What do we have that's worthy to be offered up to God.